Foreordained is the third full-length album from Phobocosm. This is a Montreal, Quebec-based death metal band, and I would say one that sticks with the traditional canon of death metal in terms of developing the sounds of bands like Incantation and Immolation into something that is much more modern and atmospheric. Now that takes a step beyond the sort of cavern core period of the late 2000s and early 2010s and steps right into something which is more along the lines of Ulcerate, Dead Congregation, and these bands who found a mastery of both atmosphere and movement while also producing a heavy riff component, and one that would be satisfying to fans of classic death metal as well. There is a certain brutality to it. There's a certain overwhelming aspect to Phobocosm's sound, which is both very familiar and as a lifetime fan of Immolation and all that, but also taken to its own extreme here throughout this record. So we'll get an example of that and listen to a song up front, and I'll explain what this record is kind of all about. So the way this band formed, it will be pretty familiar if you were there when their first album released. This record is pretty similar to that first one in some aspects. It was very detailed. It was brutal. It had plenty of riffs. There was always something to keep the mind occupied. The second record was much more spaced out. I compare it kind of the same way I would the first Crips record and the second one. They went atmospheric. They drew it out and focused on kind of a doom metal affect on that second record. And for me, that was very effective at the time. There were maybe some superior records in that style, or I just wasn't paying that close attention to Bringer of Drought back then. But over time, it is kind of maybe the go-to record for me in their discography. It's very easy to return to. It's got four very focused pieces, and it has that satisfying, oppressive doom metal aspect to it. And here on this record, they sort of combine that affect where we get some of the more complex rhythmic ideas that they've presented yet, while also we get a lot of the doomed and heavy atmosphere from that second record as well. And that doesn't escape sounding a bit like Immolation. I don't think they would want to. I think that's part of their sort of signature and approach to the diction of the vocalist and the production style of the band. But this time around, things are a little bit more clear. We can hear the bass guitar is sneaking through more often. The groups of rhythm guitars are all working in concert in a way that is very readable and effective, but also, notably oppressive in its sort of baritone gruffness. And for me, that leads to a very engrossing and impressive experience overall, which is reaching that point of like kind of a world-class death metal sound. It's a very strong production value, which adds a lot to this record, which has both a lot to say, but it knows when to kind of shut up and let the riffs ring out and hit. And I think that was kind of the level of tact that I wanted from a record like this year, which I really didn't get anywhere else. There was a point where I was hitting upon Everlasting Void on the track list after the very big and involved piece before it, where I felt like, it's just undeniably one of the better death metal experiences of the year for me. And that, maybe that was a moment of hype to start, but that never really faded as I listened to this record more and more over the last couple of months. And I find that this record just impressed me more than most others, and so it definitely earned that spot higher up on my end of the year list pretty quickly. But in terms of the second half, we get more involved pieces and a little bit more cleverness from the group as they figure out what to do with that atmosphere now that they put out those bigger pieces on the first half. And it makes for a little bit of a different road to go down. It's points of aggression and doom that sort of balance out throughout those pieces. They're about 6 or 7 minutes each. And for me, the sort of intelligence of their compositions come through best on the second half, whereas the dramatic side of the band comes through on the first half. So for me, there's an experience to be had there, which is both big and commanding in its approach, but also very dense and thoughtful in its aftermath, I guess. So That one left a pretty strong impression upon me. I really enjoyed the art direction of this release, the production values, the songcraft, and the effect of the full listen. It's a very high recommendation for me. It's one of my again one of my higher recommendations of the year. We're getting a lot of very potent releases at the end of the month, and I'm focusing on the best here up front, so that I can kind of get through the best of December. And so this is certainly up there with the best of December, and again, a very high recommendation for me. Go ahead and read the review for more of my thoughts, and check out the album. It releases this Friday.